This is the next installment of PSSA training for grade 8, and I would like to look at and go back to the first passage in this sampler that was put out very shortly in last fall, and notice that it is pretty lengthy. So if you notice that when you do take the PSSAs, you will have to encounter fully reading and looking at a piece of text and then making sure that you're engaged enough that when you come up to the questions that they're making some sense to you. Now, I'm going to go over today a question typical of the what we might see on the exam, and this one asks you to include in the passage a sentence that disproves a theory. So, somewhere in the course of the reading, you're trying to look for a sentence that is going to answer the question as it is regarded in the prompt. So, this particular one, approximately the approximations of how often kids pick these questions is most kids get this one right. Now it says the student is asked to determine which sentence the author includes in the passage to disprove a theory, and option D is the correct answer because the fact about the calves is meant to disprove the theory that mothers travel to the tropics to keep newborn calves warm. And options A, B, and C are all incorrect because they only describe the author's actions in studying the whales. So if we take a look at the first one, new humpback moms rarely rest with such young calves in tow. So my teammate John Cesare and I know there is a moment not to be missed. We're just talking about their activity. We already spent an hour and again talking more about their activity. And to get the full perspective, we need to see the underwater portion. So that in mind, we gently push away and again their activity. But if you take a look at D, what makes it different, however, as it turns out, even the smallest calves are thermoneutral, generating enough metabolic heat to keep them toasty warm. Nowhere in item D do you see something about what the researchers were actually doing, but A, B, C do talk about their research and how they are conducting their research. So that was an interesting way in which questions will uh, be be worded. Now, once in a while, you'll get what we call the evidence-based selected response question. So today's actual PSSA tip today is about this part one and this part two question called the evidence-based selected response question. So what you need to do here is read part one, answer that correctly, and then that is based on what you would answer for part two. It is generally scored that you have to get part one right in order to get part two. It is possible for you to get part one right and part two wrong. I think that the scoring will often come back on you if you miss part one, then part two doesn't make any sense. So let's get a look at it and see. This question has two parts. Part one and then answer part two. So, what is the meaning of the statement that humpback whales have come back from the brink? The whales were close to becoming extinct. That sounds pretty good. The whales are now popular with the public. The whales are now flourishing in deeper waters. Possible. The whales are being chased by other predators. Mm. So the one that looks pretty good is A, and then also C. So then we look at part two. Which phrase from the passage best provides the context to support the answer in part one? And choose one answer. Is it a success story, environmental awareness, endangered species, or around the globe? Now, if we take a look at the response to it, it is A and then C. So let's go back and look here. A, the whales were close to becoming extinct and that they are endangered species. We know this locally when we look at the bald eagle and how it's made a recovery in northwestern Pennsylvania. So we know that it was at one point close to becoming extinct, and now we notice that once it was designated as endangered species, then people began to become more aware and do protective measures to save the bird. Same thing with the humpback whales and its massive fishing of the humpback. So the student is asked to interpret the meaning of the statement that the humpback whales have come back from the brink. And that means almost extinct, and to select one phrase from the passage that supports it. So option A is the best answer, back from the brink. And then the only one that really goes with that is that the phrase of endangered species suggests that it was a species that needed to come back from the brink. So A and C are very dependent on one another. Option D is incorrect because it does not relate to the phrase back from the brink. B is incorrect because although there may be improvements in the awareness of today about the humpback whale, the phrase back from the brink connotes that whales barely escaped total extinction. And if we take a look at environmental awareness, you might be environmentally aware, but if a fisherman isn't environmentally aware, or if you're paying better attention to recycling some of your plastics so they're not ending up in the ocean, or big companies aren't spilling their chemicals into the ocean as a way to dispose of waste. um, Environmental awareness, you can be aware, but you may not be able to control a lot of the situations. So, again, this two-part answer is what we understand as depth of knowledge, and it would require you to be keenly aware of a two-part answer. So, this question is called evidence based selected response question. That's it for today. Good luck as we get closer and closer to the date for PSSA, and hopefully these little tidbits will help you remember when you encounter these questions.